GCSE English Language Revision, Implications and Connotations of Language Techniques. Lesson objectives. Draw out implications of language techniques from quotations from texts that we have looked at this year, and draw out connotations of language techniques. For each text and the subsequent questions, stop the video and try and think of your own answers before you look at the ones in the video. This is a quotation from BBC Bitesize, which is there to help you revise. It's from Martin Luther King. "We're not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." The purpose of Martin Luther King's rhetorical speech was to end racism in America and persuade the audience that everyone should have equal rights. How does he use language to deliver a strong message? King uses similes, "until justice rolls down like waters" and "righteousness like a mighty stream," to make the reader visualize justice and righteousness as rushing water, implying that they need to be forceful and unstoppable. Here is some of the meaning you might find in that quotation. He uses a powerful verb and adjective, and it's a simile. It implies speed, determination. Water transports other things with it. Connotations of a godlike power. Going with gravity, it's natural for equality to come eventually. It's unstoppable, it's forceful. Here is a quotation from 1984 by George Orwell. It's the opening sentence. How does the writer use language to introduce his totalitarian society? "It was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Orwell uses juxtaposition of ordinary weather and unexpected time. The weather reflects the attitude of the government to the population. Cold. Public clocks imply control. It's confusing and attention-grabbing, and there are sinister connotations of the number 13 in our culture. Here are some more scenarios and quotations. Take apart each one and extract the meaning, connotations, implications, and effects on the reader's emotions and understanding. What follows each one are student answers gained from my class. A sound of thunder. Several men go back in time to hunt a Tyrannosaurus rex, and then they see one. The quotation is, "Each lower leg was a piston." The technique is a metaphor. It shows explosive force, refers to machinery, metal, mobility. It could be robotic, resilient, and you might feel intimidated and threatened. This quotation is from the novel Labyrinth. An archaeologist in the Pyrenean Mountains in summer has noticed something large glinting in the earth under a boulder, but she cannot yet remove it. The quotation is, "as if it had been placed there by a giant hand." The quotation uses simile and personification. It implies that the object was put there deliberately. There's a religious connotation and possibly a fairy tale connotation. It implies it was done by something powerful, unexplained. The hand might imply precision, and it's a mystery object. The next quotation comes from a book called When God Was a Rabbit. A girl looks for a space to put up a poster of her brother who is missing after the 9/11 attacks in New York in 2001. On the poster wall, she describes the wall as like a grotesque fable. The technique is a simile with powerful language. It implies an absurd or otherworldly situation where things are distorted or malformed. It's like a made-up story. It feels unreal. A fable has a moral lesson. You might be distraught, traumatized, or devastated like the character, or feel overwhelmed and uneasy. You might feel like you want to help her or run away. The next quotation is from The Death Zone, which is paper 2. A climber describes a lethal storm engulfing the base camp of Everest in the Himalayas. The wind became a constant bullying force. The techniques are personification and metaphor. It implies strength, perhaps deliberate bullying, hateful behaviour and cruelty. It's persistent, relentless and unforgiving. It could feel like harassment and be intimidating. It's repetitive and might leave the characters or the reader distraught, traumatised and devastated. The next quotation is from paper 2 about nursing, an article about survey responses from modern nurses working in the National Health Service. The quotation is, "When asked whether they would encourage their own child to go into nursing, based on their experience, 73% of participants said no, while only 27% answered yes." The technique is statistics which give a negative view of the profession. Very few nurses would recommend it to their children. They've had challenging experiences. About a quarter love the profession and feel it's worthwhile. The reader would empathise with the nurses, but it does imply that there are problems in the profession, leading the nurses to be protective of their own children. The last quotation is from a paper 2 about Christmas, an article about one woman's hatred of Christmas on the basis of hypocrisy, environmental damage and atheism. The quotation is, "Christmas capitalism has room for all of us." The writer uses the techniques of alliteration, sarcasm, inclusive pronouns and juxtaposition. She mocks the festival's decline into making money and highlights a contrast between and a juxtaposition of capitalism and religion. She uses an inclusive pronoun us, which includes the reader, and the sarcasm that everyone can be involved, Christian, atheist, or other religion, despite the fact that Christmas is a Christian festival. Going back to BBC Bite Size for your revision, there are also these points to consider. Is the text in the first person or the third person or the second person you? Is it personal or impersonal, and why? Which tense has the writer chosen, for example, past or present, and what effect does that have? How are sentences structured, for example, short and simple to pack a punch, or is listing used to suggest boredom or to give detail and richness? Avoid technique spotting. You need to show you understand the impact of the writer's language choices on the reader and not just list them. You should always comment on the possible effects of language use on the reader, how it makes the reader respond, for example, think, feel, imagine, or visualize something. Here is a quiz from BBC Bite Size. What is a connotation? Is it an opposite idea to a viewpoint or opinion of the writer? Is it links or associations that the reader makes with a particular word, or the descriptive words used to explain something in a piece of writing? It's the links or associations that the reader makes with a particular word. Why are literary devices within a text usually important? They create a picture in the reader's mind, they stand out on the page, or they highlight or emphasize something to the reader. Literary devices highlight or emphasize something to the reader. Don't forget to say what. What would you be most likely to annotate or highlight when looking for the language choices within a text? The different ways the writer started sentences, interesting use of literary devices or words that have connotations, or what the writer decided to write about first to show the topic of the article. It would be interesting uses of literary devices or words that have connotations. As well as analysing these fully in your reading questions, don't forget, always remember to use these techniques in your writing, both in papers 1 and 2. That's how you're going to get through your exam.